My life has been all about recognizing the inner voice, which led me to discover my talents and channelize them towards becoming a professional racer. I started racing really young, or I ride riding really young for about 20 years now. When I started to look back in time, to access all those fond memories and to understand where it all began, I came across something really special. When I was a kid, my mother, she owned a Bajaj Sunny, a 50cc scooter, and she would take us out often, right? So this one day, she took my cousin and me out, and I was standing in front like a typical 90s kid. It's a small bike which looked really big at the time. She decided to go really fast on the straight road, and I remember this was my first taste of adrenaline, the first taste of speed, and the wind gushing through my ears, and the two-stroke engine roaring, and that exhaust. And it delivered a sense of freedom, and it was emotional, and I was hooked onto it forever. And this is something that I think I'll never forget. So this is where it all started for me. And as in time, I was never really someone who could sit in one place and study, right? Or read anything for longer durations. But I was this kid, this restless kid, who's ready to burst out with energy while I was expected to sit and study. The irony was that I didn't even know the word restless existed at the time. I was so small. To explain this to my parents, about this feeling. So after multiple, efforts of trying to fit into the society and its ways, I ended up quitting my studies, and it remains to be the most insane move I made to life. I'm not really proud that I quit my studies and all of that, but I understood that life is all about making that insane move, and that it ends up changing it forever. While this was happening, I approached my father when I was 16. I told him, Papa, I want to be a professional racer. Neither did he or I know anything about professional racing. But this is exactly the voice that I'm talking about. It guided me all along. And I'm really glad I listened to it, right? But much to my surprise, my dad said, Abhi, get the hell out of my house. I can't live knowing my only son is into racing. Yeah? Well, I was devastated. My whole world had fallen apart. I was in tears, and I failed to convince him at the time. Also, the rebel that I was, I never gave up. But I ended up blaming him for a lot of years to have not supported me when I was really young. But in time, I understood that it was never really his fault, and it was mine, because the kind of example that we set, towards riding a motorcycle was very dangerous, right? What do? We put on our pants, slippers, t-shirt, and a lousy helmet, and we ride along to our friends. And it's not wrong. It's not wrong to think that for our parents to think if their child is going to make it back home in one piece, and to expect them to understand, for me to take it up as a profession, it was too much to ask at the time. But it's safe to say that my father, he's a proud father now, and he's my greatest sponsor. He's my greatest support now, and to the expensive sport that I decided to pursue. Well, I manipulated my parents and got a bike, as we all did, most of us, I think. I'll study, I swear, I'll go to college, and all of that, but I ended up going to the hospital, more than I ever went to. Right? So this was me, and, bruises. I was satisfying the urge to go fast, and I was doing it on the roads, for sure. Right? Bruises all over my body, not remembering what took place the day before, waking up in the ICU, multiple head injuries. I'm sure this was the worst phase, my parents had to endure. But it also made them strong, and we learned to recover from it every time since. But strangely, I never developed a fear for speed or crashes, and I never gave up. I was still on it, and everyone was against me riding a motorcycle. Even my extended family, they were all against. Especially my mother's favorite astrologer. He made my life miserable at the time, right? I'm sure all of you go through this. It was miserable. He said, okay, fine, 2 years. He's under the period of Saturn, and he's going to die. Please don't give him a bike. And it was hell. But yeah, the voice inside me was very strong. It always guided me. As a kid, I was an autopilot. I was subconsciously doing these things which led me to where I am right now. But as I grew up, I started recognizing this voice, and we started walking towards, what I really wanted to do in life. And at this point, I spent most of my time in a local garage, learning how to make a bike go fast, make it lighter, make it faster. So I start, racing. And my first ever race was in 2010. It was called the Race to the Clouds. And it was literally the race to the clouds because it took place in one of the highest ranges in Karnataka. It's called Nandi Hills, and it was a 2-kilometer sprint. So you ride as fast as you can for the last 7 corners of the hill. So it was emotional, right? And I won the race in my second attempt in a handful of them before they call it life-threatening. I also took part in rally championship. And I call it one of the best races of my life because of the experience, right? We were battling the slush and, picking up the bike after a terrible crash, catching my breath while I was sinking into the slush and finishing the race with a broken hand. It was emotional, and, every one of the 52 that took part had crashed, but the kind of experience that we took back was unforgettable. Well, while I was racing in these races, a veteran racer spotted me, and he was kind enough to have a word with me and say that, see, you're fast and that you should be doing it on the racetrack. We exchanged numbers, and I remember bucking him every single day, and making him regret sharing his number with me. But it worked. He left me a text one day, and he said, hey, a friend has started a racing academy, would you like to join? Before all this, I was on a constant lookout for a racing academy, and there was none at the time. Right now, there are multiple ones you can enroll and, step towards your racing career. But, this was here, and, when I saw that message, I couldn't believe my eyes, right? I was like jumping like a small girl in a Bieber concert, something like that. This is what I was waiting for all my life, and this is where it all started. In 2010, I landed myself for the first time on racing circuit, right? And as I was training, to take part in racing, a question was thrown at me by the founder of the academy. He said, hey, racing is to kick off in a couple of months, or in a month's time, and you still haven't finished your course, and you won't be finishing your course anytime soon. So do you want to back off from the racing for the first initial ones, and then finish your course, graduate, and then get back to it in the mid-season? But or was I going to jump into the ocean and learn how to swim? I was definitely going to jump because I was already so late, and I wasn't going to wait any longer, right? So with a borrowed leather suit and first copy safety gears, I landed myself a spot on the national championship grid. And during this point is when I met the guides and the coaches who are going to change the very shape of my life. and transform me into one of the fastest racers in the world. They definitely helped me recognize my powers and mold me into something of that. So, to have believed in my dreams and passions, and I was fast, and I did a couple of things that made them believe that I had the potential to be a great racer. I was this kid, mad kid, hungry for speed, and I'm sure it was quite a task to tone me down into a profession that I am today. Well, I guess when you really do stand up for yourself and do what you love, everything starts to fall in place and meaning to life, right? What's more important is that you never give up and that you believe that you're a better fighter. This is what worked for me, and this remains to be my greatest strength no matter what kind of younger generation comes up and battles with me. I'm sure they won't be able to shake this belief that I have about me being a better fighter. And I always have dramatic races coming out of this belief, right? As someone once very special told me, he said to me, the one who wins is the one who believes he can. And that even a single element of doubt takes it away from you. So, to have given up all of these things in life, to have gone against the society and how it had defined life, to have quit my education and gone against my parents and the world, it was finally a sense of satisfaction to know that I was actually good at what I sacrificed everything for. And, I've had dramatic races, and, I was always hungry, I was always running to the win, and it, as they say, fortune doesn't favor the brave. The same thing, right? I was pushing all the time without having reached the wisdom that was required to become a champion. And, at once I crashed 3 times in one race. The race lasts for 20 minutes. And to crash 3 times, there's no point, right? But I kept going, and this instinct of not giving up was really strong. And, in life, one really learns from his crashes, especially in racing. But I was learning at high costs, right? Because in racing, career is short-lived. And thankfully, I qualified as an expert in my debut by winning one of the races, and I was going to be up against the fastest racers in the country. This is what I've been waiting for, and I couldn't wait to see where I stand amongst them. So in 2012, it was the moment of truth. And I ended up qualifying as the fastest racer, as the fastest rider in qualifying, and would end on to start the first race of 2012 against the fastest racers in the country in first place. It was a moment of glory for sure. But I lacked the experience, that these guys had acquired over the years. And, I had to, and I crashed a lot, and also I crashed a lot trying to win all the time, trying to chase these guys. I had to watch and learn from these guys. And in doing so, all the crashes that lasted, I had to retire in about 3 months in the very same season because of an injured finger. Not working. Anyway, so I retired out of the season in about 3 months by almost losing a finger. Right, if you guys can see, it also ended up, setting an identity for me in the local racing scenario. and also took my first flight because of it. So I crashed so much in every track, in every corner, that I lost most of my initial lessons to these, and in time I had pushed the limits on so many bikes, on so many different scenarios, and on so many different types of tires that I eventually stopped crashing. And not only, I didn't just turn into a fast rider, but also a potential championship contender. Well, the sides definitely are not working. That's, no, it's going forward. I need the ones before this. Yeah, perfect. I think the ones after this are not working. Anyway, I did turn into a championship contender, and in all of these times, I learned a very important lesson that I relate to all walks of life, is that life is all about controlling urges, right? And especially the last minute ones. I also recognize this voice that speaks to you at the very last minute when you're about to not control that urge. So if I have to speak in racing terms, it's like, something tells me, Abhi, you've done your session, it's good, let's go back inside and analyze what happened. But the urge to go for that one last lap, no, let's go for that one last lap, is exactly when you crash. So I recognize that voice, and also that I understood that you crash even when it's not your fault, right? Because you put yourself in that situation. And that started to make a lot of sense, and it helped me win a lot of races in my career. Well, crashing comes with a lot of injuries, and I've had quite a share of mine. Some of them were supposed to be career ending. Right, in 2012 I retired. Out of the 9 years that I've taken part, I've retired out of 3. This is my 9th year, I've retired out of 3. And I look at it as 3 potential championships lost. Right? But yes, crashing did come with injuries, and it was quite a task for me to get back on the bike every single time. In 2012, crashed out of a finger injury instance. In 2013, I retired out of a wrist injury, which became a tennis elbow, and then raced with broken ribs, hurt my back, landed upside down to finish the last race of 2013. And in 2017, I had a terrible crash. Right? I was thrown up in the air upside down. I landed on my head, shoulder, back, and ended up hammering my feet on the ground and cracking my heel and my talus, which is the ankle joint, even with really expensive shoes on. So this one made me doubt if I'll ever be able to get back on the bike and go fast. Right? But after 6 months of recovery and 3 months of bed rest, I was finally back on the track for the very first race of 2018. With the damaged ankle and the part which is responsible for your gear shifts and the part which is used the most on a motorcycle. I ended up, it was an endurance race of 90 minutes race under peak hot conditions of say 78 degrees track temperature, 50 degrees atmospheric temperature, and so much humidity. You're carrying 10 kilos of weight on your body, as leather suit, helmet, and all of that. With the crack thing, and I doubted if I'll be able to go fast, but I ended up being the fastest rider in my class for the 90 minutes of the session that lasted. I felt stronger than ever, and with the belief, restored in me for the 2018 championship, which was to follow in a couple of months. After having raced for 7 years as a privateer, after spending all your money, your father's money, your savings, your mother's, all of that, I finally became a part of Honda Racing India. and under the banner of dental racing, and was a factory rider. This is every rider's dream to be funded to race. After having exhausted all their investments, I think when you invest in yourself and and not give up, something will fall in place. And that's what exactly happened. And Honda picked me up, and now I'm paid to race from the best place possible. So, well, in 2018, after all of this, representing Honda, I ended up winning the championship in 250cc category, and I was crowned the champion, 2018 champion 250cc. Right? I was fastest in 8 out of 10 races. The dream had come true. I mean, we reached the milestone. But in life I've learned, or over the 7 years, well, I've understood that the circle is complete when you give back to the sport. And I started teaching. I started becoming. I was a part of the very academy that I graduated out of. And when you share your knowledge and train, you end up becoming better yourself. And I'm sure it helped me, to turn into a fast rider real quick. So I've been teaching for the past 7 years, and in the end of the day, after a training session, when you look at these spaces, it's all ecstatic. You feel content and you feel complete. And in life, I've learned that it's always important to believe in yourself, recognize what we call the inner voice, and go after what you love the most. In doing so, I developed this perspective to look at every disadvantage as an advantage. It's magical, and every negative is a positive. And when you do the best you can with what's in your control, in my case, fitness and all of that, everything started to fall in place. Also, I believe that everyone goes through the same things in life at different points, and that it's never too late to go after your calling and give meaning to life. Thank you.